In the starting position of today's puzzle, white is currently down a bishop and a rook, so it is clear that all our moves here have to be forcing moves. And what is a forcing move? Well, the most forcing move is a check. There is only one reasonable check on the board, and that is the starting move of this puzzle. So we capture on g2. Now, immediately there's only two legal moves, rook takes and king e1. If king e1, that will lead us to one of the themes of this puzzle here. The king steps into this fork against the king and the queen, which leads to a winning position. If the king were to step up either to e2 or d2, then we can simply capture the queen for free. And if the king were to step to d1, now we capture the queen regardless, and after rook takes, we give a check on d3, and on the very next move we will give a check on f1 and pick up the bishop on g1, leading to a winning position for black. So if we go back to the starting position, it becomes clear that white's only move is to recapture with the rook on g2. Now, of course, we cannot capture because the rook is defended by the queen from b2, so we need to look for another check. And the correct check is queen f3. You might be tempted to try queen d3, but here it's very important that we are taking away the square from the knight. And after king to f2, white is actually winning here because we have nothing better than to capture the rook on g2, and here there is nothing for black, and white emerges with a winning advantage. So very important that after rook takes g2, we give the correct check, and that check is on f3. Now there's a few ways here for white to parry the check. The best one is queen to f2, but first let's see what happens after the other moves. The easiest one to figure out is rook f2, because rook f2 runs into mate in 1 after queen d1 check. Now, if the king steps to e1, it's the same old story with the fork against the king and the queen. And finally, if the bishop intercepts on f2, well, then the connection has been broken between the queen and the rook, and now we can pick up the rook on g2. The king is forced to step to e3, and same old story, we get the fork on d3. So for all these reasons, the only move here for white is to block the check with the queen. So queen f2 is the correct move, and now once again there is only one winning move, and that move is the check on d1. We have to continue with the checks. Here there is only one legal move, that is to intercept with queen e1. And now comes the final blow. This time around we do step onto d3, so we give it a check on d3. If white steps out to f2, that's a pretty mate in 1. This time the knight joins the game from the other side, and that is actually a checkmate on h3, with the king having nowhere to go to. So, and if the rook blocks the check on e2, it is a similar mate. This time we give a check on h3. If the king steps to f2, this time the mate comes from d3. And if the rook checks, we simply take the rook with checkmate. So going back a few moves, that means that after the check on d3, white is forced to sacrifice the queen. And here we simply capture the queen, and after rook captures, the puzzle ends here, but the best way for black to pick up more material is to give a check on d1. And after king f2, we capture the pawn on a4. And here with all the pawns and the white king is still in some trouble, this leads to a winning advantage for black.